Paul, I need new intro music. I think I'm going to record something next month with my brother when hopefully I'm in Hawaii. It'll be
I thought you were asking me if I could put you in touch with Metallica and get them to do it for you.
Ew, no. I would not.
Ew, no. You wouldn't turn that down.
It depends which ones. I would love to play with Kirk. He seems like the coolest out of the bunch by a fair margin.
I would think if the whole band wanted to record a theme song for you, that you'd be like, yes, please.
I'd be like,
I mean, not if you had to pay for it because it'd be like super expensive, but like,
can I have everyone except Lars? Can you stay outside for a while? No, but yeah, it'll be an interesting mix of some really bad guitar with some really excellent saxophone. That could be interesting. Anyway, let's start the show. I'm Raymond. You're watching RPadTV. Today, Paul and I are going to talk about Borderlands, the movie based on the billion-dollar game franchise from Gearbox Software. There have been multiple games, DLCs, spin-offs, comic books, toys, and all kinds of stuff. So Borderlands is a pretty big deal, one of the biggest U.S. gaming franchises. Paul has props. What are you holding there, sir?
This is my little claptrap.
Yes.
And I actually have I left it on the shelf, but I even have a claptrap bottle opener.
Oh,
I don't know where I got that.
Which part of his robotic body does he open the bottle with?
It's like where his wheel would be, I think.
Okay.
So yeah. It's not like, it doesn't look like this. It's like a flat metal thing. So it's not like you open it with his ass, which would have been very cool, but.
So, Paul, I want to talk to you about the movie, your experience with the games. But before we get to all that, why don't we talk about your website and what is new on paulsemel.com?
Well, as always, I have props because
right.
I'm slowly but surely turning into Carrot Top. A lot of good stuff this week. A lot of next week, I should say. A lot of cool interviews.
We got a question for you first.
Oh, wait.
Does your bottle opener actually work?
I don't know. Because I've never actually tried it, because years before somebody sent me a bottle opener in the shape of like a weird ghost thing. And I've always used that.
Okay.
So I assume it does. I don't know why it wouldn't work. You know, that'd be weird.
Well, you gotta try it out on camera next time you're on the show.
Yeah, I'll go and buy something that needs a bottle to be opened. So anyway, sorry. So this week on paulsemel.com, lots of really good interviews. Just today, interviewed, here we go. Cameron Reed, Tor Publishing put out a new version of their classic cyberpunk novel, The Fortunate Fall, which came out in 96, but has been out of print for years. And Tor does this thing where they've reissued a lot of classic old science fiction novels that they or other people have put out before under their Tor Essentials series, and they get new people to write interesting intros. In this case, Joe Walton, who apparently is a huge fan of the book and has actually been keeping its legend alive.
Can you flash me that cover again?
Sure.
I appreciate the graphic designer has declared a war on capital letters. Love that.
Yeah, it's very Nine Inch Nails. And then one of the other books that I interviewed not the author of, but the editor for, is New Adventures in Space Opera, which is a short story anthology of space opera stories. But all relatively new ones, and people that are trying to do new things in that realm. Among the people that are in there are Alistair Reynolds, Katie Martine, Yoon Ha Lee, Tobias S. Buckle, Seth Dickinson, and Charlie Jane Anders. So that is also out this week and is muy bueno. And the interview with editor Jonathan Strahan is up on paulsemel.com right now.
So guys, please check that out. Before we get into the movie, Paul, let's talk about our experiences with the game franchise. I played the first two. It's totally not my genre. I am not a post-apocalyptic shooter guy
Right.
at all. But I mean, the game was so big that I had to play it just to kind of see what it was about. And it also had more RPG elements than most shooters, especially at that time.
Yeah.
They were released. So that is in my wheelhouse. But you are a bigger fan of the game series than I am.
Yes.
So tell me about your experience.
I've played all of the regular games. I haven't played the adventure game spin-offs that they did with that company that's gone now, the Tales of the Borderlands.
Right.
But I played all of the games. Telltale, thank you. I played all of the games multiple times. I played all the DLC for them that I could play. And in fact, over the weekend, I was in the process of playing Shadows of the Tomb Raider and realized I was coming to the end. And I was like, okay, what do I want to play next? Well, 2 weeks from now is the new Star Wars game. What can I play that I've played a bunch of times where if I stop it and don't get back to it, it's not that big of a deal? And I had Borderlands 2. So I've been replaying Borderlands 2 for the last 4 days.
What is it about the games that captured your imagination? Why did you enjoy them?
Well, I love shooting games, especially first-person shooters. I love science fiction. I love the sort of setup of it, of these sort of weird post-apocalyptic alien worlds, and I like the humor in the games.
Yeah,
the characters are really funny. It's weird. It's got a weird sense of humor about it, which we're going to talk about a lot. They're just really, really fun, and you were very right about it added a lot of like elements of role-playing games. Like as you progress through the game, you level up and you start to gain like these different special, depending on which character you have multiple characters you can play, and they each have their own skills, and you can unlock special abilities, and I mean there's actually a lot of depth to that game, because it's like even as you do things in the game, you earn points that you can then redeem to like raise other attributes. Like for example, like you might shoot like a bird just for no reason, and then like if you shoot 3 more, it goes, you finish this challenge. You're like, that's a challenge, okay. And then like it says you got 5 points, and then when every 100 points you're like, oh, now I can unlock something, and it's like you have a choice of 5 different things. Do you want to make your grenades stronger, your melee stronger, your health longer? Like, so there's a lot of depth and variety to it.
Carlos noted that you clearly love space violence.
I do love violence in space. Okay. I'm a fan of the Halo games and the Gears of War games and Dead Space, and there are a few things that I like shooting more than aliens, with the possible exception of Nazis.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I did play Tiny Tina's, which is a spin-off of Borderlands.
Oh yeah. Well, that one's very different, and yet not, because it's like it's got much more of a fantasy thing.
Yeah,
to it.
Like she's basically the dungeon master.
Yes,
with her like weird ass humor, and the character is voiced by Ashley Birch, who I'm a big fan of. A lot of people might know her from the Mythic Quest show on Apple TV Plus, and she kills it with that character. Absolutely love her.
Oh yeah, that's a fun, because it started. There was the DLC where they did that. I think it was for it might have been Borderlands 2.
I think you're right. It is 2.
Yeah, where the whole idea was that she was DMing like a fantasy game, but it's only kind of half fantasy, because it's like you're fighting fantasy creatures in a fantasy realm, but you're still using like the crazy weapons. Guns.
Yeah.
And, because that's one of the big things in that game is you get all these different guns, and like I think they said like the first game had like 1 billion guns in it or something. They made a big deal about that. Like, and they're all kinds of crazy guns. Like there's guns where like when they run out of ammo, you throw them and then they explode, and like there's like talking guns, and like there's all kinds of weirdness.
Johan points out that Halo is his favorite of the space violence games. We'll just call those Semels from now on. So basically what I'm getting is that you enjoy the gameplay, the RPG elements, and the quirky humor that really makes this franchise distinct. So with that said, let us do our thread-sized review of Borderlands. Let's kick things off with yours.
Oh, here we go. Yes, as I said when I got back from the movie last Friday, I say this as a big fan of the games. Borderlands wasn't as bad as some people are saying, but it also isn't as good as I was hoping it would be. It was, as the kids say, mid.
You also need to learn how to use hashtags correctly on threads. So it should be highlighted as in mine. Haha.
How did
I
you
said,
oh, all right, never mind. You can teach me later.
yes, the Borderlands movie was certainly a movie. It's a shame that really talented actors got to play in the fantastic world of Pandora, but were hindered by poor casting, directing, and writing. So I mean, there's a lot of people are bagging on this show, on this movie, but I don't think it was as bad as some people are making it out to be. Certainly not what the Rotten Tomatoes scores were. I think the day that I saw it, it was at like an 8 or 9 on Rotten Tomatoes, and
Right.
I've definitely seen worse things.
This is what I've noticed about the criticism of the movie is, if you are a fan of the game, you're disappointed. And if you're not a fan of the game, you had no idea what was going on and you hate it. Like the film critic for the local Fox affiliate here in LA was like, I know this is based on a video game, but I don't know who these people were. There's no characterization. Like, I hated this movie. Like, she hated the movie. Like, and I was like, okay, I get that.
It's fair. Oh, we have a suggestion for you, Paul, that you should join Space Force. I don't know what the age requirements are, but
somehow I think I'm too old and too physically unfit for that, but whatever.
Now, I want to talk about why we paid money to see this movie that we had low expectations for. Straight up, I saw this movie because I'm a big fan of Bobby Lee, the comedian, and he is in this movie for much less than for fewer minutes than I thought he would be in, but I'm a big fan of Bobby, wanted to support his career. It's a video game movie. It's hot as hell in Vegas, so going to an air-conditioned movie theater wasn't bad either. Why did you go to the theaters to see this?
Because I jokingly said to you something to the effect of, are you going to make me go see this so we can make a video? Thinking that you were going to say, no, why would we do that? And then you said yes, and I was like, God damn it.
Next time, think before speaking.
Yeah. So
now we are generally positive people. Let's talk about some of the positive aspects of Borderlands, the movie. What did you enjoy about the movie, Paul?
Well, I definitely think they got the art direction right.
Yes.
It looked like the game as much as a live action version of that game could look. I mean, the for people who haven't played the game, it has a very cartoonish, cell shaded look about it.
Yeah,
and you can't really replicate that in live action. So, barring an animated version of the story, they got everything right. Like Claptrap looked like Claptrap. The world looked like the world, and the everything, like different things. And there were a lot of little touches you would see, like like the masks that these guys wore and what these other people were wearing, and I even saw some of the boxes that, like, from thing. Whoever was the art director on this movie definitely did a good job.
100% agree with that. I was very impressed by the sets and the costumes and the choices they made with the color palettes that they used. As you said, you can't do cell shading in real life because that is a drawing technique. But the way they used color was really impressive. Some of the special effects weren't as good. Some of the CGI stuff that it kind of looked, I don't know, maybe out of place or cheap. Maybe we've been spoiled by Disney and all the stuff they do with their movies and the Marvel movies, but it didn't look as interesting as the sets and the costumes to me. But I was absolutely impressed with the visuals, the physical visuals, not the computer generated ones.
Yeah.
And was there anything else that you enjoyed about
the movie? This is something that you and I are going to differ on. I actually liked some of the casting in it.
Oh, wow.
will go into why I don't think that they did. I think they did as good a job as they could do with the material they were given. But I do think that they got some interesting people to play like the roles. I think Ariana Greenblatt as Tina was a good choice, and I thought that Cate Blanchett as Lilith was also a good choice. In fact, one of the things that struck me afterwards was a bunch of the characters in this are older women, and that's something you don't always see. I mean, granted,
Right.
I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis has to be old enough to be Lilith's mom, and I'm mom-like figure, we should say. And Lilith had to be old enough to be kind of a mother figure to Tina. But it's still interesting that they got Cate Blanchett, who, by the way, is 55.
Yes.
To play her role. Now, I know this from playing the second game. Tiny Tina is 13 in the game, and they never said how old she was in the movie, but Ariana Greenblatt was 15 when she filmed this.
Right.
So, but like, for example,
close enough. But I mean,
but they still they could have gotten, like, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't get somebody like Karen Gillan or I don't know, I'm going to butcher her last name, Pom Clementine, from Guardians of the Galaxy to play Lilith, as opposed to Cate Blanchett. And actually,
wait, for context, let's take a step back for a second. I mean,
okay.
Casting was one of the problems that fans of the game had with the movie. And specifically, there were three. You brought up two of them with Cate Blanchett and Jamie Lee Curtis. Now, I don't know if it's said overtly in the games, but when I played the first two, I always got the impression that Lilith was a woman in her 20s or something like that, and Tanis, who's Jamie Lee Curtis's character, was older, but not that much older. Certainly they weren't women in their 50s and 60s
right
here. So, but you like this casting?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of it. Yeah, I mean, the other one that struck me with the age thing was Moxie, who I mean, they got Gina Gershon, and Gina Gershon, sorry to out her like this, she's 62.
Yes.
Like, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't get somebody like Megan Thee Stallion to play her.
Oh,
or Alexandra Daddario, who people know from The White Lotus. Like, she looks like Moxie.
They know her from that, not that Baywatch movie.
Well, yeah, you know her from Baywatch. You'd know her from, what was the HBO True Detective movie, TV show she was in. Like, she would have been perfect, and she's also a lot younger. So I as an older gentleman, I appreciated the older ladies getting their due. But yeah, I thought again, like, I thought that both Ariana and Cate Blanchett were good casting in those roles. The problem, as we'll get into, was the material they were given.
Right. Now, the other one people had a problem with was Kevin Hart. And he appears in the first, like, 30 seconds of the movie as Roland. And the character in the games is like, your typical strapping, serious soldier.
Right.
Then you have a 5'3" comedian who people love for making funny noises and faces playing the soldier, which I did not like that casting at all. To his credit, Kevin Hart didn't do his usual shtick of, the physical humor and the yelling and screaming and all that. He tried to play it as straight as Kevin Hart is capable of playing, but still, I'm not buying like a 5'3" funny man as any kind of soldier, unless it's, for the Lollipop Guild or something.
Right. Yeah, except that, I don't know, Roland's never been like an interesting character to me. There's not much to him in the games.
Sure.
Like, I get why. I mean, and let's be honest, there's a lot of people that don't like Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
And so I think, there was that crowd, and I do agree that, they probably would have preferred somebody bigger and more imposing in that role, but I don't know. He didn't really bother me in this at all.
I don't know, if you're going to get a comedian to do that role, like, why not Terry Crews? At least he would look like a soldier.
Yeah, Terry Crews. Yeah, Terry Crews. That's a good person. he would have been really good in that, actually.
Aha.
So, okay.
We have a comment from Johan who says she was also in Percy Jackson. I'm guessing that's Alexander.
Oh, that, yeah,
Daddario.
Alexander Daddario, yeah.
All of a
Yeah,
sudden,
she was in the movies.
I'm interested in those
not
movies.
the TV shows.
Ah.
The TV show is much better.
I did not know they were separate things.
Yes.
The more you know.
Two different versions of the same story.
So I have a minor casting criticism, and I think this is more on a point we'll talk about later, but I love Ariana Greenblatt. She's like the nerd goddess of child actors now, appearing in Marvel, Star Wars. She had a big role in Barbie.
Yeah.
And now she's in this. So she's like, she's like the princess of nerd movie acting. But her characterization of Tina was a little off for me, maybe because Ashley Birch is so distinct. She did the eccentric, quirky, childlike thing, but I wanted a little more derangement from her. Like from that character, I always get the sense of she's funny and quirky, but at times I'm not sure if she's sane, and I didn't get that from her performance in this movie, and I will blame Eli Roth for that, as I won't blame him.
But this goes back to what I was saying. Like, to me, that goes all the way back to the script.
Yes.
That goes back to the screenplay. That Ariana has shown us, like, especially in the Barbie movie, there's like a moment where she kind of gets unhinged, and like, I see why they cast her, and I can see how with a better script she could have really crushed it as an unhinged Tina.
Better director also. But we will talk more about that later. Were there any character actors you wanted to see more of in the movie? You mentioned Gina Gershon. Who doesn't want to see more of her?
Right. Yeah, Moxie was hardly in it. I know you're going to say Bobby Lee.
Yes.
I was surprised that Claptrap wasn't in it more. I mean, like, that, which is a weird thing to say, because once he shows up, he's kind of there the whole time, but like, he didn't have nearly as much to do or to say. And again, it goes back to like the writing. Some of the stuff, like, he was, we'll get into it, but like, he didn't get to be as funny as he is in the game.
Right.
So.
Well, he wasn't there during filming. Jack Black, who plays Claptrap,
right?
So he did all his work in a VO booth. So anything they wanted to improvise or change, he wasn't around for it. I guess they could have recorded him after as well, but yeah, I mean, there is something to be said about physically being with the rest of the cast to keep the flow of things.
Right.
I want to give a shout out to Haley Bennett as well, who plays Lilith's mom. I think she's a wonderful actor. And like Bobby Lee, she's in the movie for like under 2 minutes or something.
Right.
So these are two actors that I really like, and they were in the movie blink and you miss it style. So that was a bit disappointing.
You could say the same about Janina Gravikar, I think her name is pronounced. I may be
Gravikar, yes.
Yeah, who I really, really like. She's done a bunch of cool stuff.
Yes.
But I can't really justify having that character be in the movie more. Like, if she would have been, and again, she would have been great as Lilith, but
she actually did her homework too. So I was watching a bunch of press interviews for this. Out of the ones that they sent out, she was the one that seemed to know the most about the game, and that her character is the daughter of a character from the DLC. And she did this thing like for Nox, the game Nox, had that eye patch. So she wanted his burnt eye patch that she would wear around her neck. So, and apparently that was her idea for it. I'm like, oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Paul, you mentioned the writing as being problematic. What didn't you like about the script? I mean, there's not a lot to like about the script, in all honesty.
See, I think this is part of the problem. They decided ahead of time that the movie was going to be PG-13.
Yes, and the games are M-rated, so already
which is the video game equivalent of R-rated.
Yeah.
And what effect I think that had is they really watered things down a lot. In fact, I didn't know who wrote the movie when I was watching it, but as I was sitting there in the theater, what I kept thinking to myself is, it seemed like this movie's first draft was written by somebody who knew the game. And then the second and third and maybe fourth drafts were written by people who didn't know the game, but they know the rules of screenwriting as they are taught in screenwriting schools. And they know how major studios like their movies. And they watered it down and they watered it down and they watered it down. And they made it less weird. They made it like much more palatable. And what that ended up doing is making it just completely unfunny. I never laughed once in this movie. Not even once.
I laughed at something unintentional. I don't even remember what it was, but it wasn't.
I didn't even do that. Like, and the funny thing is, so the movie comes out 2 weeks after Deadpool. Deadpool, by the way, is R-rated, is unhinged,
and now $1 billion
and is $1 billion, right? Like, they must have been sitting there thinking, like, God, what the fuck did we do? Because the thing is, everything in Borderlands is cranked up to 11,
right?
And the movie,
it's very, very splattery.
Yeah. Now, yeah, and the movie is at like a 6. And once in a while, it goes into a 7.
And that's a great
like
point.
Right. And the thing is, I'm not talking about the blood and gore. Like, I don't, that's not what I'm looking for. What I was looking for is for Tina to be unhinged.
Right.
What I was looking for is for the humor to be edgy and to be smarter and weirder and think, you know what I mean? Like,
but there is the point though about the blood and gore, not to be excessive with it, but the action in the movie is really violent. And then when you don't have the blood, it kind of looks a little silly.
Right. But what I'm saying is I wouldn't want it to be R-rated because of the blood and the gore. I would want it to be R-rated because of the humor and the edginess of and the weirdness of it and
more F-bombs.
And if it has bloodier and gorier stuff in it, yes. Because this is the thing. Eli Roth comes from horror. He's a horror movie guy. And he knows how to make things bloody. I couldn't watch the whole thing because it was disturbing as hell. I think it's called Cannibal Holocaust. Is one of his movies. Like, yeah. How that got on HBO one night, I have no fucking clue. But it was gruesome. So he could have made like a movie as bloody as Saw with this, and I didn't like that. Wouldn't have made it better. What would have made it better is like if it had like much more of a much better sense of humor. Now, I do want to point something out though. And
context for a second. So we have a few people watching on Twitch, and they might know the game more than Eli Roth's movies. So if you don't know Eli Roth, he's, as Paul said, he's a horror guy, but also some people call him a slasher guy. He is known for the Hostel movies and Thanksgiving. He is not in my wheelhouse at all.
Right.
By the way.
And by the way, Thanksgiving, which came out just a few months ago, made way more money than Borderlands, which is kind of and cost way less to make. So
yes. I did want to address another point you brought up that I thought was great, on how it seemed like the script was a mash between, video game guys and trained writer guys. And there were times where the movie was flowing where it felt like a video game, but not necessarily Borderlands, but it almost felt like a platformer where they were going through different levels, and that's how it was progressing. But there were also 3 distinct acts, and the third act just felt like rushed and had plot points that were out of nowhere. Like, oh, by the way, Lilith, you're super powered. Okay, let's do this third act.
Right.
Like, that was sudden.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because there was something struck me when I was watching the movie. Like, obviously, we're spoilers and all that, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
You're told in the very beginning of the movie, or you're sort of led to believe that Tina is the daughter of Iridium and she's the one who can open the vault. And it struck me that this would have been more interesting and I would have cared a little more if you didn't know that at first. if it started off with Tina has been kidnapped and her dad has hired Kevin Hart to rescue her. I mean, Kevin Hart kidnapped Tina and her dad hired Lilith to rescue her.
Right.
And then you find out later, oh, actually, no, it's not really his daughter. She was made in a lab, and he's trying to make someone that can open this vault. So I think that, yeah, it's things like that kind of, I was like, you don't need to spell this out. Like, you can lead us on a little bit. So.
I mean, yeah, it gets into that debate that we had in our last 2 episodes, actually, about showing and telling, like when to do which. So in this case, they went too far in the other direction.
Yeah, there is one thing I want to point out, though, about the script and as it relates to the movie, and this I think relates also to the critical reaction of the movie. I saw a lot of people, especially film critics, who said it's a sci-fi comedy, but it's not funny. And I was sitting there thinking, no, it's supposed to be a comedic sci-fi movie, and it's not funny. You know, there's a difference. Like, I think that some people, especially people that don't know the games, went into it thinking, oh, it's going to be like Spaceballs.
Really?
And no, it was not supposed to be like Spaceballs. It's supposed to be more like closer to like Guardians of the Galaxy, like a sci-fi action movie that has situational humor, is not like a big goof. Right. And I think that is yet another reason why like the film critics like kind of had a problem with it.
That's interesting, because I actually haven't talked about the movie with anyone that didn't know about the game. So I'd be curious to see what their expectations were after looking at a trailer, because the trailer didn't really tell us anything.
No.
So in addition to co-writing the script, Eli Roth directed the movie, and I don't think he did a very good job. And I'm not trying to shit on his other work. A lot of people love his movies. They're not my thing at all, but you know, he's made a lot of money and people really enjoy his horror slasher movies. What did he do wrong here, direction wise? I mean, I had that thing. I wish he pushed Tina in a more deranged direction. And I think a better director would have made that character. I almost see her like, to me, she's supposed to be like a tween Harley Quinn, you know? And, and I didn't get that.
That's a good assessment, I think, in some respects. I think I don't think he did as bad a job as I think he was sort of a little out of his league in a sense. Like, and I could see where like the guy who directed Deadpool and Wolverine, Sean Levy, would have done a better job with this. I could see James Gunn, who did the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, would have done a better job with this. Like somebody who's done this kind, you know, this is a big movie to cut your teeth on, having done these like horror things, because it's not a horror game. Like if Eli Roth had done, say, the Resident Evil movie or the Dead Space movie and then done this, I think he would have done a much better job, because he would have had cut his teeth there.
And that would have been more familiar to him.
Yeah.
That style of
game. Because this isn't really like there's nothing scary in horror. I mean, like, yeah, okay, it has blood and gore, but then again, so does Call of Duty. So like, you know, this is not in his wheelhouse. I mean, it sort of reminds me of when David Lynch did Dune. Like, I'm old enough to remember when that was coming out and everybody was like, what? Why is he doing this? Like, and then you saw it and you're like, yeah, no.
And for the people watching, this is Eli Roth in the jacket there, not just some random white guy I'm posting a photo of. Context.
Yeah.
Carlos says, dang, those RE movies would have been great if Roth did one. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I could see him doing a good job with those, you know.
I mean, that makes sense, unlike this choice. But apparently he's a fan of the games, and this was something he wanted to do.
Okay.
So good on him.
Yeah.
You know, I'm criticizing the job he did on this movie, not the man himself.
I mean, I think to be honest with you that he might have done a much better job if it was like we said, if he had been allowed to make an R-rated Deadpool, Borderlands movie, I think he might have done a much better job. I'm not saying it would have been really, really good. I'm not saying it would have been as good as like, you know, my metric is always, you know, I'm buying the Blu-ray kind of movie, but like I think had he been allowed to make an R-rated movie with R-rated humor and have it be weird and you know, and not adhere to the screenplay rules about trying to hit the 4 quadrants and blah 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 blah, I think it would have been better.
Maybe. I mean, there are a lot of what ifs to play with this one.
Yeah.
I just think he was the wrong guy for both writing and directing. It's cool that he respects the franchise, and they had what's his face, Randy Pitchford on set for a lot of this. I wish he would have been more vocal, about his creation, because this is a big deal for him.
Yeah, I will say this. Like I said, I've been replaying Borderlands 2, and there's a lot of different elements of the game that are not in the movie, but almost all of them are things that wouldn't really work in the context of a movie.
That's a good question. So for the aspects of the game that you enjoyed, what didn't you get from the movie? I mean, the humor isn't nearly as sharp.
Right.
But
that's a big thing. The only sort of real particular thing is the Borderlands games are known for their guns. That first game, they were like, it has 1 billion guns, and a lot of the guns are weird and crazy, and not just in the way they look, but like, you know, some of them talk in later games, and there's some that like you, when they run out of ammo, like you throw them and they explode and whatnot, and you know, there's guns that like light you on fire, and guns that shock you, and guns that like drench you in acid. And I kind of wish they had put some of that into the game.
That would have been
wish there had been like a little different. And actually, what I thought might have been a little more interesting is the games. In the beginning of the game, there's a voiceover from, I forget the character's name, but he's the guy who runs the gun shop.
Right. Marcus, right? Marcus,
thank you. And I kind of thought maybe he should have been the one doing the introduction. And it made me start to think like back on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie. Not the TV show, but the movie, which is pretty good, not great, not as good as the TV show, but still pretty good. And like, it would have been interesting to have those kind of like, you know, Hitchhiker Guide moments of like you have this gun and this gun and this gun, and like these are skags and they do this, and you know what I mean? Like, had a little more background on sort of the different aspects coming from Marcus, like explaining kind of things.
Right.
I think he could have, especially if they'd been done in a very funny, if they'd been funny, like when Stephen Fry did the Hitchhiker's Guide commentary in that movie.
Getting back to your point about the guns, I mean, they are definitely a big deal in the games, and they didn't really play that up in the movie. They almost seem to make a bigger point of Tiny Tina's explosives. That got more of an emphasis. But yeah, I think you know, having the guns be a part of the movie, a bigger part of the movie, would have made it more unique and more in line with the appeal of Borderlands.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, guns in this country are problematic. Even I don't know if they wanted to glorify make-believe guns. Was that an issue? Possibly?
I think they could have gone away. I think they probably just felt they didn't need to have that in there. I mean, because there are other things that are big in the game. You know, like the loot, like how like there's all these boxes everywhere, and they all have ammo or money in them. Like,
and they're random.
You know,
yes.
And you know, you don't really need that. Or like how when you die, you're not really dead. You come back, like you're there's a new version of you that transposes in these like, you know, teleporter things. You know I don't think you needed that. Like,
I think we do need that in game. I would love to see like a fantasy movie where one character just goes around breaking barrels because he expects to find stuff in there. Like, there's always gold in barrels. What are you talking about?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because last night, we're going back to a prop, I finished reading a book called, and I brought it because I thought it might come up, called The Runes of Engagement. And the idea of the book is these portals open up in our world and they lead to a fantasy realm, and the military sends people in to secure it, and these soldiers get stuck on the other side. But all of the soldiers are like big fans of like World of Warcraft and like the Lord of the Rings, and they keep thinking that like things are going to be like that. Like they talk about people being chaotic neutral, and they're like, you know, why does this like character do this, and like, you know, shouldn't she be doing this and whatnot? So
Carlos says maybe they'll do the breaking pots for rupees in the Zelda series. You know, Peter Jackson could have used this. Imagine how many hours more Lord of the Rings would have been if Gimli went around smashing barrels every 10 minutes.
Because that's what everybody says about the Lord of the Rings movies. They were too short.
They need to be longer. Yes. Now, I generally don't like doing this, but people like it. Let's compare this movie to another movie that was poorly received, as if this were somehow an Olympic sport. But for you, was Borderlands better or worse than Madam Web?
Oh, way better. Way better. Now,
interesting.
Here's the thing. It was way better, but it was more disappointing. I don't like Madam Web as a character. I don't like it as a concept. And so that movie being terrible, it's also part of the Sony Spider-Man-ish universe, and they've yet to do a movie that I really like. I mean,
you're gonna love Craven.
Yeah, I already am like, I don't care. Like, I'll watch that when it's on TBS or something. This is how I watched Venom, and that was good enough. So the fact that Madam Web was terrible didn't really bother me. Whereas I lost a lot of hope after I saw the trailers, but I wanted Borderlands to be good. I liked the game. I liked the world. There's I thought an interesting story to be told there. And so it was very disappointing. But that said, if I had watched Madam Web on my own and not watched it to do one of these videos that we do, I would have turned it off. I wouldn't have turned off Borderlands. I would have sat there and watched it, and not watched it out of morbid curiosity, which is how I made it all the way through the Flash movie. I would have turned this off the way I turned off Uncharted and Assassin's Creed and the Warcraft movie and Blue Beetle and the second Aquaman.
Totally forgot Uncharted was a movie. I need to watch that.
I mean, those are where Madam Web falls for me, in a movie that I never would have made it through. This comes through. I would have watched the whole thing, and I would have gotten to the end and been like,
I am not sure if this is better or worse than Madam Web, but I found Madam Web much more entertaining for reasons you might not think. Like, the whole thing with Madam Web was that it made me laugh unintentionally so many times, because you can tell that a lot of these people were putting serious effort into trying to make a good movie, and they were not. It was just, I just found it hilarious in a totally unintentional way. Whereas this one, I didn't get I thought the writing and directing were lazy. Some of the performances were good. I thought Cate Blanchett did great with the crappy material she had to work with. Ariana Greenblatt, I think she did great with what she was given, but could have used a better director.
Yeah.
And Bobby Lee's 90 seconds in the movie were not that funny, but I love that he's in it. So good for him. Carlos says, I'm shocked Raymond avoided saying he prefers Madam Web because of Sydney Sweeney. Yeah, I mean, I would love her in any movie. I do think she is underrated as an actor, and people might laugh at me, but if you watch the SNL sketch, the one that's called Bowen Straight, I think she's hilarious in that movie, and she totally sells that she's attracted to Bowen Yang, which makes no sense in the world for several reasons. But in that sketch, I'm totally buying it from her. I think she is. I think we're going to discover in 10 years she's way more talented than people give her credit for. I hope we do.
I agree with that. So,
but yes, Madam Web, I found hilarious for reasons that they probably didn't want me to find it hilarious. And this movie had just felt misguided and lazy. I'm not as big a fan of the games as you are, so I didn't have that disappointment. I was disappointed for Bobby Lee, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's always it's one of the cardinal sins for me. It's like a big thing, when somebody squanders a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm still pissed about. I'm going to go off on a tangent here.
There
was a video game, like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, and it was supposed to be a World War II first-person shooter, a genre I love. Except the idea was that Churchill had gotten killed in a car accident in New York, and thus we never showed any interest in going into the Second World War, so Japan never launched the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Interesting.
It's now the 1950s. The Nazis have completely taken over Europe, and they launch a sneak attack on New York City, which is where the game begins. And it was one of those like, that's such a cool, interesting idea, especially because a lot of that stuff is based on alternate history. Like Churchill actually did get hit by a cab in New York before World War II, but he survived.
Right. Like, what if he was 6 inches more closer?
Yeah. And so it was such an interesting premise, and then the game wasn't very good. And I was like, this is worse than like playing like a game that's terrible, where it's just an uninteresting idea and you didn't do a good job with that. And that's how I feel about Borderlands. I'm like, there's no reason why Uncharted was the same way. Like Uncharted, people have made good movies like this. They're called the Indiana Jones movies. Why can't you make one? I don't understand why there hasn't been a good Tomb Raider movie. Resident Evil, okay, I get it. They're all based on B-movie zombie movies. It makes sense that you wouldn't have a fantastic Resident Evil movie. But this, yeah.
Now that you brought up other video game movies, let me ask you this. Will Borderlands change the way studios approach video game movies? Will they? I mean, we got the Super Mario Brothers, but then we have a large assortment of crap.
Yeah. My concern is that they won't understand the real lesson of it, which is M-rated games need to be R-rated movies. I fear that even after Deadpool and Wolverine makes $1 billion, that they're still going to think a movie based on a video game has to be PG-13 so teenage boys can go see it. And it probably doesn't help that the Super Mario Brothers movie made $1 billion too.
Right.
And that the Sonic the Hedgehog movies made a ton of money. So they're going to think there's still money to be made here for family-friendly-ish video games.
Right. But then don't do Borderlands and make it PG-13.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing. Somebody mentioned the Legend of Zelda. That potentially could be a good movie because the source material is family friendly.
Right.
And if they put the care into it the way they did the Super Mario Brothers movie, they could come up with something really, really good.
I think it's just a matter of time. I mean, a lot of the people that are still in power in the studios are old enough to not get the gaming market. I mean, that's
Right.
changing as people age up, but as people in that age range who grew up as gamers get the top level positions, I think that'll just
Right.
take care of
Well,
itself.
yeah, I mean, that's what happened with comic book movies.
Yes, exactly.
For years, you had people who were like, "Oh, it's based on a comic book. We can lowball the budget, and the fans will come anyway."
Yes.
And then the fans were like, "No, we're not going to." And then I mean, it really kind of started with Batman, where they were like, "We're going to get a top tier director and a good actor and a good script and blah blah blah." And now, like, even now, you have comic book movies that like are sort of half-assed and they end up being terrible, Madam Web. Whereas when they put the time, effort, and money into it, you get multi-billion-dollar franchise like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So
right. I mean, the stuff that Feige has been in charge of, the best thing he's done is being truer to the comic books than the Fox stuff, for example, with their death metal leather costumes and all that. And they made a point, Bryan Singer made a point to make the movies his own thing and to really keep it separate from the comics. Like, as an example, he was totally against Wolverine having, either the brown and orange or yellow and blue costume. But when people saw that in Deadpool and Wolverine, they were floored. Apparently during the filming, like, people on set were like crying, like, seeing that.
But don't you think that people were floored by that because they hadn't seen it after so many years? I mean, that's the thing. I think in those, especially in the Bryan Singer X-Men movies, the first two, I think if they had shown up in yellow spandex, like, people would be like, "Oh, okay, it kind of looks a little silly," It still looked a little silly in this movie, but it was sort of like, "Oh, it's here finally," like,
I think they looked silly either way. I mean, they looked like, some S&M club instead of superheroes.
I don't think they quite look that, but yeah, okay.
Well, we got a few comments for you, Paul.
Okay.
Bad news, Paul. Oh, I was wondering why it was all capital, and I thought that was your new nickname.
Yes.
Bad news, Paul.
I know they're doing. Yeah. Well, I think Uncharted did okay, and Sony thinks it can be a franchise, and it's got Tom Holland to,
Yeah, I don't know about, like, again, I hate to be heightist here, especially since I am not tall myself, but having like a 5'6" action hero isn't. Well, I guess it worked for Tom Cruise, so maybe I'm wrong on this one.
Yeah. Well, they also paired him with Marky Mark, and Marky Mark's not that tall,
Is he? I didn't know that. Is he like?
I don't think he's certainly not like 6'2". He's not like The Rock or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean,
you can get around it. So
he makes you feel the vibrations. Feel it. I've seen it. This is an interesting question. Do you guys feel that Borderlands would have been better as a series like Fallout? No, not necessarily. I don't think that was the problem. The format wasn't the problem. Fallout took the source material much more seriously and tonally was a better match for the game than the Borderlands movie was for the games. I mean, that got Fallout got dour and violent and
right. See, I disagree because I think if they had made it for television and specifically a streaming service as opposed to network television, they would have felt like they could be edgy and weird and much more in line with the movie. That's like the only reason, though. Like, I think all the issues that we've been talking about, especially the writing, would have been different if it was a TV show by virtue of being a TV show. Not that the story necessarily lends itself to episodic, although it could have. I mean, those games are fucking long too,
Now, for context here, this movie has been a flop. I believe it made $8 million on opening weekend.
Yes.
Some reports are saying now 10 million to 16 million, and the budget was well over 100 million. So they
like
had
150 million or something. And can I point out, by the way, that I always think it's funny I thought it was funny that people were like, "Oh my god, it only made 8 million. It only made 8 million." And I was sitting in my apartment thinking, like, I would like $8 million.
Well, you also didn't make yourself with 150 million. I mean, it's all context and being relative.
Yes, I know. It's just funny that people were like, "Oh my god, that movie made nothing. It only made $8 million," and I was like,
considering
I'd like to make $8 million.
How much it costs, how much the actors' salaries were, and the set and everything. Yeah, I could see. Oh, I forgot to post this meme during our Madam Web discussion, but this cracked me up. My friend Clinton sent this, posted by mask_bastard on Threads. But yeah, I love that. Madam Web surrendering its sword is the worst movie to Borderlands, the new.
Yeah, I don't agree, but yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen worse stuff than both of those movies, so I don't think they're nearly as bad. They're not good. Don't get me wrong. You know, neither of these movies are good, but
yeah, Aquaman 2 was way worse, and
I agree. I mean, for me, the one that hurts the most, and this ties into the disappointment you were saying earlier, but Green Lantern is still the most traumatic movie I've seen in the last 20-something years.
Yeah, because you're like a huge Green Lantern fan. Yeah. So that goes back to what I was saying about something. It's worse when it's disappointing as opposed to just terrible.
Yes.
So
I it is my macho grande. I will never get over that unless, they somehow do a memory wipe thing where you can erase things from your memory. I
always wonder what it's like at home when Ryan Reynolds makes fun of that movie and then he goes home and it's like the movie that he met his wife on. And she has apparently a good sense of humor, but like there's got to be like a little bit of weirdness there where it's like, honey, like their kids must be like, isn't that the movie you guys met each other? Like, yes, but
I don't know what their household is like. I mean, he just cast his kid saying, look, it's fucking Peter in the movie. So I don't know.
Yeah, that is true.
Oh, another good question. Should I watch any of these if I'm bored and they are available to stream for free? Okay, in this case, I would say watch Madam Web because it's freaking hilarious in the sense that these guys were trying to seriously make a good movie and were seriously failing. And also because Black Doug from The Hangover is in it.
I would say yes with Borderlands if you're interested in the movie, but if you end up giving up on it after half an hour, no shame.
No shame. That is fair.
Wow,
this might
be. It's not like if you watch Rashomon and you give up half an hour and then you deserve whatever.
Yes, then you're then you just have bad taste.
Yeah,
So let's get out of here on closing thoughts on Borderlands. Sorry.
Well, yeah.
Sorry.
I didn't think it was going to make me pine for the game. And then over the weekend, I was like, what could I play? Oh, wait, Borderlands 2. Yeah, what the hell? And I'm having way more fun playing Borderlands 2 for the umpteenth time.
Silver lining. I got you to play a game you love again.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel much better about the whole thing now.
Yeah, I don't feel bad. Believe me, people have gotten me to do way worse in my life.
That's true.
And we won't talk about that.
That'll be it for our coverage of the Borderlands movie. I hope you guys can join us next week, where a bunch of friends and I will be talking about Robert Downey Jr. is Dr. Doom, what it means, what we expect. And we'll also be touching on some other Marvel announcements made at D23 as well. For now, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave a comment. Comments are highly enjoyed, and I reply to each one. And thank you so much for watching RPadTV. See you next time. Bye for now.